Sparta was a name that carried weight across the ancient world. They were a symbol of military perfection, discipline, and unshakable power. For generations, they stood at the top of the Greek world, undefeated in open battle, feared by all who marched against them. Their warriors were trained from childhood to fight without fear, to obey without question, and to win at any cost. But in the middle of the 4th century BC, that legend came to an end. It wasn't crushed by a vast empire or a grand alliance of cities. It was undone by a single elite unit of just 300 men, who stood together, fought as one, and rewrote the rules of Greek warfare. Their discipline was unmatched, their loyalty was unbreakable, and their victory changed the course of history. Yet, despite all this, their name has faded from public memory. They left behind no great monuments, no famous poems, and for centuries almost no trace at all. The world forgot the only force that ever stood face to face with Sparta and won. So how could such a story vanish? Welcome to the hidden history of the sacred band of Thebes. Before we talk about the army that shocked the world, we need to take a step back. Let's understand the world they were born into, a world of proud cities, endless wars, and one name that stood above all others: Sparta. In the time before modern nations, Greece was not one country. It was a land of city-states, independent places like Athens, Sparta, and Thebes. Each had its own government, its own army, its own traditions, and its own way of life. Sometimes they were allies, more often they were rivals. And in this world of constant competition, one city earned a fearsome reputation. That city was Sparta. Sparta was different from the rest. While other cities built temples and debated philosophy, the Spartans trained for battle. War was not just something they did, it was who they were. Every part of Spartan society was built around the military. From the day a boy was born, his life was shaped by it. At age 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families and placed in an agoge, a harsh state-run training system. There they were taught how to fight, how to endure pain, how to survive with nothing. They were beaten, starved, and forced to sleep outdoors, but they learned discipline. They learned how to kill. Weakness was not allowed. Only the strongest boys became Spartan warriors, while the rest were cast aside. And those who made it became hoplites, elite infantry soldiers with red cloaks, bronze armor, and the famous round aspis shield. They fought in a tight formation called a phalanx, shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield. In this wall of bronze and muscle, the Spartans moved as one, and for centuries, no one could stop them. Sparta earned its place through blood and victory. During the Persian Wars, when the mighty empire of Persia invaded Greece with hundreds of thousands of soldiers, it was a small force of Spartans that held the line at Thermopylae. Only 300 Spartan warriors, alongside allies from other cities, stood in a narrow pass and held back a sea of enemies. They all died, but their sacrifice inspired Greece to unite and to fight back. That battle became legend, and so did the Spartans. After that, over and over again, the Spartans proved their strength. At the Battle of Plataea, they crushed the Persian land forces and helped end the invasion for good. In the Peloponnesian War, they defeated Athens, the richest, smartest, and most powerful democracy in Greece. Other Greek cities had great thinkers, playwrights, and orators. Sparta had warriors, and in this world, that was what mattered most. To fight Sparta in battle was to risk everything. Cities that defied them were burned or enslaved. Enemies who stood their ground were crushed, and because of this, many cities chose to surrender before the fight even began. Even their allies watched them with unease. Spartans had a cold, almost silent way of speaking. We use the word laconic today to describe that speech style, named after Laconia, the region Sparta controlled. But in the shadows of this greatness, other cities were watching. One of them was Thebes. Thebes sat in central Greece, in a rich region called Boeotia. It was fertile and full of warriors, but Thebes didn't have Sparta's fame. It didn't have Athens' wealth. It was often seen as second-rate, a city caught between bigger powers. For years, Thebes shifted alliances, sometimes with Athens, sometimes with Sparta, trying to survive in a dangerous world. But Thebes was not weak. It was just patient. While Sparta sent out armies, Thebes trained quietly. While Sparta basked in its victories, Thebes studied its tactics. And while Sparta crushed others with overwhelming force, Thebes learned how to strike smarter, not harder. Still, the odds were never in Thebes' favour. In the early 4th century BC, Sparta was at the height of its power. It ruled through intimidation, placing garrisons in rival cities, breaking alliances and rewriting treaties. Even when wars ended, Sparta found new ways to keep itself on top. Other cities could do nothing but wait and hope that one day something would change. But no one expected it would be Thebes, and no one believed that Sparta, the army that had never lost to a smaller force in open battle, could fall to an unknown unit from a lesser city. But that's exactly what happened. Because deep inside Thebes, something was forming, a small group of warriors, unlike any other, and when they stepped onto the battlefield, history would change. Finally, in the year 378 BC, a new force appeared in Greece, one that would quietly shift the balance of power. It was only 300 men, but not just any men. These were hand-picked warriors, trained, loyal, deadly, and they fought for something deeper than orders, deeper than glory. They fought for each other. This was the sacred band of Thebes. To understand their creation, we must return to a time when Thebes was under threat. Sparta had taken control of the city's central citadel, the Cadmea, and replaced the government with a pro-Spartan regime. Many citizens fled into exile, waiting for a moment to strike back. When that moment came, it was fast and violent. The exiles returned, overthrew the puppet rulers, and reclaimed their home. But reclaiming power was not enough. Thebes needed protection, not just from outside forces, but from the threat of collapse within. A new government had to be defended, a new army had to be built, and out of that moment of danger and rebirth, the sacred band was formed. At the head of this unit stood Gorgidas, a respected general and one of the leaders of the liberation. He saw the need for a permanent, elite force, a group that would not just fight well, but stand as a symbol of strength and unity. He gathered together 150 pairs of male lovers, not random couples, but warriors, chosen for skill, discipline, and loyalty. Each pair was made up of an older man and a younger one. The older taught, guided, and protected. The younger learned, respected, and stood at his side. Together they became brothers in arms, and more than that, partners. To modern readers, this idea might seem unusual, but to the Thebans it made perfect sense. Love in ancient Greece carried many forms, and between men it was often seen as powerful, a bond that sharpened courage and crushed fear. Think about that for a moment. If your life depended on the man beside you, and you loved him, would you ever turn and run? Or would you fight harder, stand longer, and give everything to protect him? That was the thinking behind the sacred band. Their strength did not come from numbers, it came from trust and from the knowledge that each man would rather die than see his partner fall. These men were trained like no others. They lived in barracks high up on Cadmea, where they ate, slept, trained, and prepared for war. The city paid for their upkeep. Their weapons and armour were maintained at public expense. They were always ready and always near. Their days were filled with exercise, wrestling, running, combat drills. They worked together, moved together, and eventually thought as one, and when the moment came, they would not hesitate. Every detail was chosen with purpose. The unit was small enough to move quickly, but large enough to punch through enemy lines. They could be deployed as a shock force, used to hold the front line, or sent behind enemy ranks to strike key targets. In a time when many armies were made of seasonal farmers and part-time soldiers, the sacred band stood out as a professional, permanent elite. When Gorgidas first deployed them, he spread the pairs across the front ranks of larger units, giving each group of regular soldiers the strength and resolve of these elite fighters beside them. But that would soon change. As their reputation grew, so did their role. Later, under the command of Pelopidas, the band became a unified unit. Pelopidas had helped lead the revolution to free Thebes. He was young, courageous, and deeply respected. He understood the true power of the sacred band. With him in charge, they trained harder and fought even smarter. According to tradition, the pairs in the band swore oaths of loyalty to each other at the shrine of Iolaus, one of the male lovers of the hero Heracles. Heracles himself was the patron of Thebes, a symbol of strength and protection. The connection between love and war was not seen as weakness, it was seen as divine. Their name, the sacred band, may have come from those oaths, or perhaps from the nature of their mission. Either way, it carried meaning. These men were chosen, trained, and trusted with the defense of Thebes, and they carried that responsibility with silence, discipline, and deadly skill. In a time when cities fell and armies fled, the sacred band stood firm. They were not just a force on the battlefield, they were a message to the world. Thebes would not bow, Thebes would not break, and if you came to conquer it, you would have to go through them first. At this point in history, few outside Thebes knew what the sacred band truly was. To many, they were just another name in the list of military units rising from the endless wars of Greece. But soon the world would find out exactly who they were and what they could do. Once the sacred band had been formed and trained, it didn't take long before they were tested in battle. The sacred band began its career during the opening phase of the Boeotian War, a conflict that would last several years. Their first tasks were not dramatic invasions, but steady, disciplined work. They patrolled borders, protected farmland, and ensured loyalty among smaller cities in the region. These early actions helped Thebans regain control over Boeotia and stabilize the countryside after years of occupation and unrest. Over time, their reputation grew. Commanders began to rely on the sacred band as the vanguard, the first to enter danger and the last to withdraw. They were used where discipline mattered most, at key river crossings, in narrow mountain passes, and in cities that were unsure whether to resist or surrender. By 375 BC, a more serious test arrived. The sacred band, under the leadership of Pelopidas, was sent north to confront a Spartan garrison stationed near the town of Tegria, close to the Oracle of Apollo. The mission was clear: remove the enemy force and secure the area. But things did not go as planned. As the Theban column approached, scouts reported something unexpected. A much larger Spartan force was returning from campaign and headed directly toward them. The Thebans were outnumbered at least 2 to 1. Ordinary troops might have turned back, but Pelopidas did not hesitate. He gathered his cavalry, issued quick orders, and led the sacred band into formation. One soldier reportedly said, "We've fallen into our enemy's hands." Pelopidas answered calmly, "They have fallen into ours." The battle began fast. The Theban cavalry struck first, disrupting the Spartan lines. Then the sacred band moved forward, compact, silent, and focused. Their formation held. Their timing was precise. When the Spartan commanders fell, the rest of the enemy force began to falter. The sacred band pressed forward, taking advantage of every gap. They didn't scatter or chase. They advanced in rhythm, clearing the field step by step. When the dust settled, the larger Spartan force had been driven back. It was the first time a smaller Greek army had defeated a Spartan one in open battle. The victory at Tegria sent a message. Thebes was rising, and the sacred band had become a force to watch. In the years that followed, the sacred band took part in multiple campaigns across central and southern Greece. Their role expanded. They were no longer just the elite core of Thebes' defense. They had become a mobile strike unit, called on wherever speed, discipline, and effectiveness were needed. During a campaign in 369 BC, the sacred band joined a broader assault on the city of Corinth. The terrain was difficult. The defenders had the advantage. The Theban forces were eventually pushed back by enemy light troops, but the sacred band maintained their formation throughout. Their ability to remain organized, even in retreat, prevented a total collapse of the mission. That same year, the unit was used to support operations deep into the Peloponnese, the Spartan heartland. Thebes had begun leading alliances of its own. Now, instead of defending Boeotia, Theban forces were campaigning far from home. The sacred band served as both shield and spear, guarding Theban commanders and delivering decisive blows at the enemy's weakest points. In the following years, Thebes became involved in the long and difficult Third Sacred War. This was a religious and political conflict centered on the control of the Delphic oracle. While the details of the sacred band's actions during this war are scarce, records suggest they were deployed across multiple fronts. They protected supply routes, reinforced weakened allies, and took part in coordinated assaults in the north and west. Even outside of battle, their presence had value. As a permanent standing force, the sacred band could respond to emergencies quickly. They escorted important envoys. They showed up wherever discipline and strength were needed. In a time when many armies disbanded after each season, their constant readiness gave Thebes a critical edge. Throughout the 360s BC, the unit remained active, though the details of their campaigns became less visible in surviving records. Still, their role never diminished. Their mere presence on the battlefield lifted morale and strengthened the confidence of allied troops. By the late 4th century BC, Thebes had grown into one of the most dominant powers of mainland Greece. Its influence stretched beyond Boeotia. Its alliances reached Athens, Thessaly, and even parts of the Peloponnese. At the heart of this rise stood the sacred band, of course. But all of this was only a prelude, because the moment was coming when they would face their greatest challenge yet, the strongest army in the Greek world. The battle was called Leuctra, and nothing in Greek history would ever be the same again. In 371 BC, Sparta sent an army north into Boeotia. Their goal was to crush Thebes and end its growing influence. As we already mentioned for years, Thebes had been challenging Spartan authority in the region, and it was now time to settle the score. The Spartan army was large, around 11,000 men. It included full Spartan citizens, allied troops, and veteran hoplites. Leading the army was King Cleombrotus I. Confident in their strength, the Spartans expected another quick victory. The Thebans, under the command of Epaminondas, had fewer soldiers, about 7,000 in total. Among them was the sacred band, led by Pelopidas. They were positioned at the front of the left wing, directly across from the Spartan right, the strongest part of the enemy line. Most Greek armies at the time used symmetrical formations, spreading their forces evenly across the field. But Epaminondas tried something different. He arranged his army with an unusually strong left wing, up to 50 ranks deep. This put maximum pressure on the most dangerous part of the Spartan army. The sacred band stood at the very front. Their role was clear: lead the charge, take the impact, and push forward. Behind them were layers of well-trained hoplites, all moving as one unit. Epaminondas trusted their discipline. The battle began. The Theban left wing advanced directly towards the Spartan right. The rest of the Theban line moved slowly and stayed back, buying time. When the two sides clashed, the impact was immediate. The Thebans hit hard. Their depth and focus gave them momentum. The sacred band struck with force and precision. Spartan ranks started to break. King Cleombrotus was wounded in the fighting and died shortly after. His officers tried to rally the troops, but the pressure was too great. The right wing collapsed. With their stronger side falling apart, the rest of the Spartan army began to retreat. The Thebans held the field. The Spartan dead included hundreds of soldiers and key commanders. The battle had only lasted a few hours, but the result was historic. Sparta, for the first time in memory, had been defeated in a pitched battle by a smaller force. Their reputation as the most feared army in Greece was broken. Leuctra changed everything. For Thebes, it was a turning point. They had stood their ground, faced the best soldiers in the Greek world, and won. The sacred band had proved themselves not just as elite warriors, but as a force that could shift the balance of power. Sparta would never fully recover from the shock. The myth of their invincibility was gone. In the years that followed, Thebes stepped into the spotlight. It became the dominant power in mainland Greece. Its generals led bold campaigns, reshaping alliances and freeing cities that had once lived under outside control. Epaminondas, the mind behind the victory at Leuctra, became one of the most respected commanders of his time. He pushed south, entered the Peloponnese, and broke apart the old power structures that had once seemed untouchable. He founded new cities, including Megalopolis, and helped liberate Messenia, a region that had lived under foreign rule for centuries. These actions shifted the political map and gave Thebes new alliances. Throughout these campaigns, the sacred band remained at the center. Their discipline and unity made them more than just an elite unit. They were a model of what Thebes stood for: courage, precision, and loyalty. Their presence on the battlefield sent a clear message. They were not a temporary force. They were here to stay. At home, Thebes led the revived Boeotian League, strengthening its regional leadership. It began to influence decisions beyond its borders and had the military strength to back them up. Other Greek cities, Athens, Corinth, and Argos, watched carefully. Some cooperated, others hesitated, but all acknowledged that Thebes now held the advantage. Still, the rise was not without cost. Theban power was tied closely to its leaders. When Pelopidas fell during a campaign in Thessaly, it was a heavy loss, and when Epaminondas died in battle at Mantinea, it marked the beginning of a slow decline. Without their vision, Thebes struggled to maintain momentum. Their campaign slowed, their unity weakened, and far to the north a new force began to grow, one with plans that would soon reach deep into the heart of Greece. If you've ever wondered why the sacred band of Thebes faded from memory, the answer lies here. When Philip II of Macedon launched his campaign into central Greece in 338 BC, he wasn't just expanding territory, he was reshaping the entire Greek world. By his side stood his son, an 18-year-old prince named Alexander, already a commander and eager to prove himself. The city-states that had once ruled the region, Athens, Thebes, and others, now faced a new power rising from the north. At the small town of Chaeronea, Philip's army met the combined forces of Athens and Thebes. The Macedonian army was large, disciplined, and equipped with new tactics the old city-state militias struggled to match. Still, Thebes stood firm. At the heart of their line stood the Sacred Band. They took up position on the right wing of the Theban army, facing the best of the Macedonian assault. When the fighting began, the battle quickly turned fierce. According to ancient sources, it was Alexander himself who led the charge on their section of the battlefield. The Sacred Band held their ground. Even as the larger army around them began to collapse, they did not retreat. Line after line they resisted. They'd been trained for this. They'd prepared for the worst, and now, surrounded, they fought to the very end. Every single one of them was killed. When the dust settled, Philip is said to have walked the battlefield and come upon their bodies. 300 men, fallen in tight formations, shoulder to shoulder. Moved by what he saw, he is believed to have wept, not for their cause, but for their courage, for the loyalty they had shown to each other, for the bond that had made them strong, even in death. After that, the Sacred Band disappears from the written record. The new Macedonian order had little reason to honour a defeated past. Thebes declined, then fell, and the memory of the Sacred Band faded with it. Centuries passed. It wasn't until the late 19th century that archaeologists uncovered a mass grave near Chaeronea. Inside were the remains of 254 skeletons, lined up side by side and buried with care. Nearby they found a lion statue, likely raised in their memory. The Sacred Band had been forgotten by history, but the ground remembered. Have you ever heard of this army that stood its ground against Spartans and then vanished from history?